Hello, you beautiful mutants. It is coming to Kickstarter number 2 time. We're doing Demons and Robots this time. I don't have a name for this next book coming out at all. I really should think of one. So, this one is based on my love of the Exalted line, my love-hate relationship with the Exalted line. Exalted always has this cool thing at the very end of their line where they do the Alchemicals, which are the robot guys, and the Infernals, which are the demon guys. And those are the coolest parts of Exalted without any argument. They're just the best. They're better than the kind of benders that the Dragon Blooded are. They're way better than the Sidereals, who are a conceptual mess. They're better than the Lunars, who are just lame furries. Like, they're really better than the Solars, who are just dudes, you know? Sorry. Yeah, the Infernals are cool. They're punk rock, hell-based Exalted who have the powers of broken and defeated gods. And the Alchemicals are actual robots made by super Soviet people that live in a robot world. So that's just basically the coolest thing ever. So I'm going to do my version of those things. And I'm trying not to be too derivative because I love a lot of what Exalted did. And Exalted very much did its own thing with all those concepts. And I want to do something that's kind of similar for mine, but I don't want it to be like, I don't want it to be exactly the same thing. So I'm keeping a few things. I'm tossing a bunch of other stuff out. And here's the basics of it. Okay, so the book is going to be the introduction to these two new chunks of the setting. Hell is going to be Naraka, so yes, you can actually go into Naraka and party with the demons there, or get eaten by them, or whatever you want to do. It's going to be a scary place made out of the remains of the defeated Ashura. So the Ashura in this setting, and this is drawn from Indian myth and other myths as well, but I like the term Ashura. The Ashura are these gigantic, conceptual, titanic, like god principles. You know, they're gods and titans and landscape and concepts that were huge and powerful, but they kind of fucked with the destiny of humankind in one direction or the next. So heroes rose up and they vanquished these things, but turns out they were too big to die. The wheel of Dharma and reincarnation was just not made for things this big to get processed through it. So they broke on the wheel of Dharma, and all of their concept and their bodies kind of just leaked out of it and made its own little pocket universe. And this pocket universe is Hell. The guy that's in charge of making sure Hell stays in Hell and everything else stays the hell out is Yama, the King of the Dead. He's the only one of these things that didn't ever actually die, because he kind of started dead. He's basically the concept of death itself. He's still a troublemaker, so instead of getting killed by these heroes, they were just like, hey, new plan. How about you just sit at the border? You can have a little leg in our world and a little leg in Hell, and that way we don't have to kill you and see what comes out, because God knows what that's going to do. You know, killing death might be a bad idea. And also, you know, you won't be actively destroying everyone by making death the only principle in the universe, and give some room for life to grow. And Yama was just like, do I get to be an asshole? And they're like, oh, buddy, we insist. So yeah, that's Naraka. It's not... you can see where it shares some DNA with the concept of the Exalted Hell, which is Malpheus, where they took all the primordials and they warped them so that they became their own prison. This is kind of similar to that. So I like the idea of the landscape being made out of these giant monsters that are kind of too vast to bother with the little ants of mortals that sometimes crawl on them. It's filled with demons. Some of these demons are created directly by these gods. Some just sort of find their way there or get tossed there because it's kind of become a cosmic prison for stuff like this. And a lot of times, something's Dharma will just naturally draw it towards Hell, or it'll get spawned from Hell. Like, if you're an evil ghost of just a mortal person, you generally find your way into Naraka at some point. And there are legitimately ways that you can suffer here that cleanse your karma and let you go back and reincarnate. So it does sort of serve a cosmic principle. It's sort of supposed to be there. It just wasn't there until someone put it there. I've got 7 Ashura, because I want to have one big, cool martial style for each one of them. Their martial styles are going to be interesting. Again, I'm taking a page from Exalted here. The Infernal Exalted had a really cool concept, which I think was pioneered by Neil Raymond Prince. Neil Raymond Price. For some reason, I want to call him Neil Raymond Prince, which I don't think is his name. But don't correct me, because I don't care. I love the man and I admire his design, but I am like biblically bad with names. Sometimes I mispronounce my own name and I'm Joe. So anyway, he made this idea where the charm set, the magic powers that you got from them, would slowly turn you into one of them. So, like, for example, one of them is a big evil city that used to be like a tyrant king that was also kind of like the Yahweh. So, like, you have like this nuclear divine fire that you get, and like you can turn your skin into bronze and all kinds of nifty stuff like this. And you can also do stuff like shout, and people do what you say because you're a tyrant, right? You're a big cosmic bully. So that's a really fun kind of character to play, but the genius of this is that as the Exalted become more powerful, they become like more mythic and more godlike. Well, because their powers aren't based on something like the sun, or virtue, or fate, their powers are based directly on the powers of these demon kings, these Yozis. So instead of that, you slowly turn into a big brass city that's like tormenting yourself because your own nature is something that you hate. And like you grow extra souls and all kinds of weird stuff happens to you. So like that's really effing cool, right? Like that's goddamned amazing. And it was a little too vast of a concept to fully realize within the Book of the Infernals, but the seeds were well planted, and they were realized later on by other authors in the same game line. So like it's really nifty. And there's multiple paths you can take where you can turn into your own kind of Yozi and kind of clear your soul and become this other kind of being entirely. All neat stuff conceptually. Mechanically, it leaves a bit to be desired, unfortunately. But it is, as far as like breaking truly new and inspiring ground in TTRPG design space, it's great stuff, right? And so I wonder something like that. Their martial styles aren't just kick-ass martial arts that give you super moves. Their martial styles kind of turn you into one of these things. So with each one of these 7 things, I have their concept, like the thing that they rule or represent or embody, like Yama's death. For example, the Vitra is like a dragon who's also like icy and cold, so he's all about like stasis and motion and greed and such like. So like there's all different ones, and they all kind of have a concept they embody. They also have a piece of landscape that they embody. You know, desert, city, mountain, whatever. And some of these are really like heavy metal. You know, like it's not just a city, it's like the city of brass. You know, it's not just a desert. It's like this trippy like 1970s neon album desert, you know, where you go to hallucinate and see religious visions and things like that. So like, yeah, psychedelic landscape, surreal desert, you know, like trippy desert, you know. And so like you have those 2 things, and you also have like the way they do stuff, like their big attack defense stuff, their super move. So this is one of these martial styles have a different kind of trees to them. Like normal martial styles have form, 6 novice, 3 master, 3 expert, 3 master, and 1 supreme. These are different. Actually, let me show you the little chart I'm in. And the reason I did them this way is because I want you to be able to go all the way to the top of the degree chart just by using just one of these things. Yeah. So these guys, the infernal ones, have 1 form, 6 expert, 3 master. Sorry. 1 form, 6 novice, 6 expert. So they have double the number of expert of normal kung fu, 3 master level techniques. So the same amount of master level techniques, but they also have 3 supreme techniques. So those 3 things that each one of the Ashura have wind up being like, those wind up being the totality of that Ashura. So like if you have those 3 supreme techniques, your body turns into that landscape, and you act through this Ashuric body that you're able to create. Kind of like the high level spirit charts allow you to make like this tulpa of yourself. You literally make a tulpa of yourself, and that's how you take like character level actions. But your actual real body is that chunk of real estate. So that's like the supreme technique there. The supreme cosmic principle thing lets you more or less be a god of that cosmic principle. And all of them are really cool. Like Chang-Chi's thing is he can cause like absolute social chaos and anarchy. That's a power that he has. And that's a power you get to have too. So a lot of these kung fu moves aren't kung fu moves. They are things that are kind of beyond that. So we're going into different design space with these. They're much more overtly magical principles that alter how you interact with the game. Now, admittedly, the last one, the super attack / super defense, that's just a big kung fu move. You could learn that one and just have a big boom. I think you should be able to do that if you want to. So, the core way that one of the damned heroes, the new hero archetype that I'm going to introduce in this, interacts with these is they start out in a karmic debt to these. The concept of these is, again, it's very similar to the Infernals, where they are failed martial heroes. They were going to be great, but somehow they erred on the road to greatness, and instead of becoming one of the Lone Wolf Fists, they were damned. They made a deal with the devil, and that's how they got power instead. So, they can get karma like any other character. They have to accept a dharma by joining a clan or being a ronin or whatever. And once they accept dharma, that's how they can get karma. But until they do, they can keep going into karmic debt to these ashura. And when they do so, they get new powers. Once every so often, once every arc or so, they can basically do this dark ritual, and it grants them a new power, and it grants them more debt. The debt manifests as an imbalance, and there are 7 of them, one for each of the ashura. And the ashura want stuff. And so what these imbalances allow them to do is act through you. Let me give you some examples, because I've written them down. So, for example, if you have taken the Bone Scepter, which is the mark of Yama, here is the dramatic way this manifests. By the way, all of these things, their mechanical imbalance is just prana. It's a prana imbalance. So you get less hell magic if you don't obey their edicts. So if you do, here's what you do. Let's see. Yama decrees his black judgment through you. This dedicates your highest ranked action to creating a prophecy. He always uses his most powerful available technique you know to boost this. Concerning the current situation. Prophecies are detailed on page 132, by the way, under the Art of the Seer. If your prophecy's rank is less than the imbalance rank, take a cosmic imbalance equal to the difference, page 128. So yeah, you can continue to get imbalances if you fuck this up. Note, this power cannot supplant a stronger prophecy and may fail, in which case you take the imbalance at full rank. So basically, Yama wants to declare things. He wants to declare his own version of cosmic law. And he will do that through you every single round with your highest rank set, spending your prana on your most powerful technique of his that you know to make him do that. To make you do that, him do that through you. So if you don't want that to happen, you've got to lose your prana. That's how it works. So yeah, it's a constant struggle if you decide to keep going into debt. You also get mutations and slowly become more inhuman and monstrous as you go into debt. So the other side of this, the flip side of this, is that you can pay your debts. So if you do heroic deeds, if you accept a dharma and you do heroic deeds and you gain karma, you can spend that karma to pay off any of these techniques. And as you do so, you actually lose that and your stats change. Instead of having like the hellish version of chakra, which your all of your chakra have a hell version as a damned hero, and those are the ones that open and give you magic. Instead of that, you cleanse them and you get the normal version of these things. So it is possible to pay off your debts and be a damned hero. Be a damned hero. Just be a damned hero. But it's possible to do that and cleanse your karma and learn these powers on your own merit. It's possible to do that. It's possible to just go full into debt and let the dark powers work through you and have corrupted chakra and prana and be like a legendary monster and still be a completely playable character. And it's also possible to walk a razor's edge between balancing both. Totally up to you. So it's a story maybe of redemption, maybe of salvation, maybe of damnation, maybe of trying and failing. I don't know. It's your story. It's your character. But that's the way the different hell charms manifest. So hell charms, hell techniques manifest. Um, so yeah, I'm really pleased with that. Each of the Ashura have a whole are going to have a whole little chunk of the book, probably a page or two written to them. You have to think of every Ashura kind of like it's its own clan. They have their own philosophy. They have their own landscape that they favor. They have their own aesthetic, their own realms of power. So, yeah, instead of having a Dharma, because they were broken on the wheel of Dharma, they just have their own conceit and pettiness and their own dark urges, and that's what they give you instead of destiny is the ability to be their slave and do what they want. They act out their impulses through you. As you gain their power, you slowly become more than a god and more than a man. You become like a titan, kind of. And if you get the ultimate, the two supreme techniques that allow you to control their cosmic principle and become the kind of landscape they become, then you're like a little chunk of hell in the real world. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing. Because again, if you pay off all your karmic debts, then this manifests according to your will. So, I mean, yeah, you're a giant temple made of glass surrounded by an enormous surreal desert, but maybe this is a good thing. You know, your asheric body, your tulpa, might manifest as an angelic thing. I'm not here to judge you. It's your fucking tulpa, bro. So that's what the damned heroes do. I'm very excited to write these guys in detail. As you can see, I've done a lot of concept work with them. A lot of this was just doing math. The unfun part of this job is making sure the math lines up. Like, for example, I had to link together, because I wanted there to be two paths here. Like, I wanted you to be able to go into karmic debt and to link that with how high of a rank of an imbalance you would take at a given time, and I had to link that to the time that passes in the game. So that's this. And I also wanted to make sure that paying these down karmically could reduce that to the point where it would have significant steps each time you did so, and it would link. So I had to link the karma cost to the rank of imbalance. So that's this too, and I had to make sure all of that worked within the amount of karma necessary to get all of the different techniques in a given tree. I had to make sure there was the proper number of techniques to give you enough karma if you were going to buy them, purchase them legitimately, and I had to make certain that that linked up with a downward spiral to the imbalance getting ever more powerful, so that it would matter at higher degrees. So yeah, it's boring. It was boring. It was all very boring. The math works. I got it. It's just math. It's just a bunch of math. It's all math. Writing out the concepts. This was the fun stuff. Writing down like what the devil gods wanted and how that manifested. That was fun. I've got all of those, by the way. Naming the Ashura, giving them names and concepts was fun. So all that's done. It's right there. I'm currently typing it all up and getting it organized, and I'm writing a little bit extra. This is a part of the setting that requires a little more explanation because it is more metaphysical. It's not just, here's a desert filled with dudes with guns. You know, it's like, okay, so there is a concept of reincarnation. So there is a place like hell. How do those things work? It is very much directly drawn from myth. So, like, I've been reading a bunch of Indian myth and a bunch of Japanese myth and a bunch of Chinese myth, just various Vietnamese myth, things like that. And anything that's really cool, I've just been stealing. And of course, I'm a huge fan of Exalted, so anything that really worked there, like the hell that's like this anima, it's like a animistic place that hates you. I'm stealing that. I think that's too cool. So yeah, all that stuff that works, I stole. So that's half of the book. The other half is the artificial heroes, which are robots, just straight up robot dudes. So in Exalted, the robot dudes are they exist in Autothonia, which is another different Titan. He wasn't evil. He actually worked on the side of the gods, but he was really like, he was kind of Hephaestus, where he was kind of like maimed, or something was like kind of wrong with the guy. In his case, he was sick. He had like some kind of robo like illness. Like he basically had like the black lung. You know, he had what do they call it? Consumption. He had robot consumption. That's what was going on with him. And at one point, after all of the other primordials got turned into hell things or killed, the only one that was still around, I think, was Gaia, because that was the planet that they were on. And so he was like, okay, all right, something's wrong with the Exalted. They've all been something, they got fucked with somehow. So I'm worried that they're gonna go crazy and kill me. So what he did was he got all of his dedicated followers together, like the craftsmen and like the architects and engineers and all the people that like believed in hard work and dedicating themselves to things and all the geniuses of creation. And he's like, okay, we are going to leave creation. I'm going to fold myself into a different universe, and I'm going to shut myself down, and you guys are going to maintain me for a couple of 100,000 years, and then I'm going to come back and see if this is all blown over. So he only had like 1/1000th of the people he needed to make that work. So then he just was like, oh, okay, well, and he just opened up his little hatch and just beamed like hundreds of thousands of people that had nothing to do with this inside himself, and was like, y'all are coming too, bye, clink. And they came. So the history of the people of Autothonia are like a very tiny amount of geniuses and a whole bunch of unwashed scrubs got kidnapped. And so he did that, and they made robot cities inside of his clanking robot body, and he's like this big giant industrial factory on the inside. And so yeah, this isn't a very natural place for people to be, so eventually they made their own heroes in the alchemicals. They made robot people, and they took these soul gems that they have, they put in their head, it's what houses their soul when they die, and they use these to, like, bring the next generation online whenever more humans get alive, because there's this well of souls somewhere inside of Autothonia that's, like, filled up with a bunch of unborn souls from creation. And, like, that's how they reincarnate. They don't have a natural cycle of reincarnation. They just have this machine that puts souls into these gems, and they put the gems in the heads of babies. Easy. You know, simple. Easy to do. Occasionally, Autothon will take some of the souls and eat them, because that's what he eats. It sucks to be a primordial, you know, and it also sucks to live inside one. So, the thing is, the reincarnations stay in these gems. And so if you take a gem that's had, like, the reincarnation of a hero for several lifetimes, you can take that, put it in one of these alchemical exalted, and Frankenstein that shit to life, and you get a robot person that's like a superhero, but also a robot. And that's cool. It's a really cool concept. And that's what they do. Their society wound up being kind of like super Soviet stuff, like it's really kind of communist-y, which gives them a really cool aesthetic. Even if you, like me, don't like communism, like, aesthetically, you gotta admit, it's pretty tight. Yeah, that's their world. It's a cool robot world with cool robot people that are the heroes, and it's all, like, Soviet punk and rad. So, that's really cool. I don't need much to sell me on a setting, okay? I just don't. And that's a lot. And it's clearly inspired by, like, movies like Metropolis, and the Transformers movie, the 1986 one, and, like, Battle Angel Alita, an anime like that, which are all, or like Armitage of the Third, you know, that are about like robots and how they deal with stuff. And there's a lot of cool stuff in it. Like, the sickness in Autochthon is turning into this kick-ass, like, heavy metal corruption, which makes like gremlins and void monsters. So that's pretty badass. And the alchemicals themselves have several different directions they can go with their powers. They can just like install the I think it's called like the Lotus engine or something, and learn Kung Fu. Fine by me, robots and Kung Fu, you know, I'm all for that. But they can also keep bolting robot parts into themselves and get ever bigger and turn into like walking tanks, and then eventually they can turn into like whole fortresses and cities. So that's pretty rad. Or they can also go crazy and start like becoming gremlins, and that also makes them like all fleshy and gross. So that's really cool. So there's lots of different things that the robots get to do, lots of different paths they can choose. And they're unique in the Exalted world because they have panoplies of charms that they have to install or take out. So, like, they don't always have the same power set. Sometimes they need different ones. And so they go to their tanks, they have all their attendants, like, rip out their old robot charms and put in new ones. So that's kind of a cool concept, too. They're kind of modular like that. So that's really nifty. There's a lot going on with them that's really a lot of fun. So my take on that, I don't want to do Autochthon. I don't want a sentient robot world. That's too much conceptual dissonance for me. Like, I either want it to be animistic or I want it to be a robot. In my case, I'm going full robot. Fuck animism. So I'm going to have just a big floating fortress city, this huge diesel punk robot city that's just flying up like the city in Battle Angel Alita, because, again, I have no originality. And underneath it, it's all like, it's super high up too. It's like in the fucking troposphere. This thing is super high up. And it poops out all of its detritus and waste, and it just makes this giant mountain of like scrap and rust and like, half functioning monster robots. And because of how toxic this thing is, how much like fucking byproduct it does, it's just in this sea of like acid rain clouds that are just constantly pouring acid and smog down below. So it's just this hellscape underneath. And I figure what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a page out of Metropolis, where the very top of it's kind of a paradise garden world where like all the elites live in more or less paradise, and then everything underneath is just this like industrial clattering hellscape where all the workers toil ceaselessly in their meaningless jobs, just to maintain this huge engine. And somewhere in there are the artificial heroes. They're straight up robots, and there's already some precedence for them in Lone Wolf Fists, in the Art of the Artisan, where you can make like robots that are like sentient. Same thing. These are straight up new heroes that you can play that are robots, and there's different kinds of directions you can go with them. Right now, I know I want there to be a balance between going more human or going more robot. Like, that's kind of the choice I want you to make. I don't really have an analog to the Gremlin stuff. I think it's cool and Cronenbergy. Again, it's maybe one concept too much. I feel like the binary choice is a little cleaner, because you never really have a true binary. You always have the binary choices presented, and then this kind of gray middle path that combines elements of both to different degrees. So you actually always have kind of a Venn diagram there. And I'm interested in presenting the clean binary to allow players to explore whatever part of the Venn diagram interests them. So if you add another pole to that, then you have a really awkward three-dimensional pole. And if you can imagine three bubbles as a three-dimensional Venn diagram, that gets a little messier. It's not quite as clear that you're making a moral decision along like unambiguous axes. At that point, you're kind of thinking of it almost more just strategically in a real politics sense. So I think adding a third pole to that is a mistake, personally. Like, this is my thing. I don't think they fucked up with it, and it's got a lot of cool stuff. I think I don't want to go that route. I want it to be two directions: more human, more robot. So I like the idea of getting more and more robot parts, and that being a trade-off that makes you look and eventually act less human as you become more and more robotic, and the way you look at the world changes. So there's only one big imbalance with them, and that imbalance makes you more mechanical and makes you prioritize things like a machine does a lot more than a person does. It doesn't like make you evil, it just removes the parts of your humanity that allows you to connect with other humans. So your empathy, your moral reasoning, all of that stuff just kind of goes away, and it's replaced by logic. It's replaced by the clean machine processing of thinking of things in purely strategic, purely game theory terms. So that's what that imbalance does, and it doesn't manifest in a big way until you're pretty far down into the I am a robot line. So as you start to just take away your human form and replace it entirely with function, that's when that imbalance really manifests. And it's not even an imbalance exactly. It manifests like an imbalance in the rules, but what it really is just you sacrificing the human experience to be a more efficient machine. And that's one of the routes you can take. You can get less human, become larger and more vehicle-like, and then eventually become like a fortress in a city. Again, this is very similar to, like, in practical terms, it's very similar to the Hell Exalted, or the Hell Heroes I was talking about, where you become like the landscape eventually. Same thing. You'll have like little robot decoy bodies you can bring out that you use to function on like a mortal way, like a character, but your actual body is going to be that fortress. So my game actually has rules for things like vehicles and things like, large fortresses and areas where like you have to think about the resources of things in a landscape way, because I've got all those rules in Lone Wolf Fists already. I put those down concretely so that I can explore that concept space with power sets in future supplements. Well, this is where we're getting to it. So that's a route you can take. But the other route is trying to become human even though you don't start as a human. You don't even start with a human soul like the alchemicals do. You're straight up just a goddamn robot. but you have ideas and feelings and a personality because of the sophisticated programming that you have. So if you choose to learn more mystic martial arts, there's a whole different path of power where you're learning new kung fu and it's making you more of a person. And this allows you to connect with people, and this allows you to eventually even change your body, such as that you're like a person. You just look kind of like silvery and what have you. So it's kind of like the Tin Man Pinocchio route. You know, you get a heart, you get a moral center, and yeah, that's the other route. And I almost feel like that's kind of basic, but I think that as in play, that'll be a really rich, rewarding experience, because I think people are going to look at you and see the fact that you have like a diesel engine for a head, and their first thought isn't going to be, oh, that's a human being. You know, they're going to react to the diesel engine head. And then your actions and like the way you role play is going to be something that kind of changes the way NPCs look at you, changes the way your party looks at you. I think that's rich, and I think that that's a fun path to explore. So I'm probably going to give that its own dharma. I don't know what I'm going to call it exactly, but basically it's going to be whenever you take actions that like a moral person would take, whenever you think about like put other people before yourselves or do something heroic to change the world to better people, or like pursue justice, or anything, or when you develop a human relationship with someone, when you fall in love, like all of that stuff that you wouldn't expect in a game about kung fu robot punching. When you do that stuff, you get XP, because that's what I want you to do. And that was already blazed for me by the Marvel Face Rip RPG. There's literally parts in there where it's like, if you keep a social engagement, you get karma. Same exact thing. I want you to be orienting yourself, gameplay and tactical decision-wise, towards doing things that are roleplay things. Some people think that's a wrong-headed way of approaching it. In practice, I find that gets everyone on the same page. Rules are ultimately a way that we all can agree on what should be happening and why in a game. That's why I designed them like I do. So, is that a little bit basic? Yes, but I think it's going to be a rewarding roleplay experience. And the fact that it exists on as the other pole means that there's this cool spectrum where you're making decisions like, okay, I need to have rocket arm for this mission I'm going to, but I've also got a date with Sally, so I'm going to have to find a way to make sure rocket arm doesn't interfere with the date, and the date with Sally doesn't get in the way of battling the army of face eaters, you know? Like, that's the kind of shit I want to happen organically in play because of the two directions that your decision matrix is pulling you in. So, that's the robots. You can tell they don't have quite as much conceptually going on as the Hell guys. I still think they have enough going on that it warrants them being included, and I'm really looking forward to doing robot powers that are things that are physically installed on your robot body. That's neat. I don't know if I want to introduce a ton of new martial arts with them. There's going to be 7 styles for the 7 Ashura. I think there's probably only going to be about 3 for the robots. Mostly because they can join clans. You know, they can get all the martial arts that already exist in the game, including the Hell martial arts if they want them. That's right. Remember earlier when I said you didn't have the option to turn into a weird gremlin and have a third path? I was lying. You totally fucking can. So, ta-da! I can't help myself. I love gremlins. I love David Cronenberg. Y'all just gotta suck it. Anyway, so, yes. So, we've got a lot of concept stuff written down. I have been struggling to find the time and motivation to sit down and actually put this stuff on a Google Doc that you guys can see. Over the next few months, here on this channel, I'm going to be chronicling that whole experience, and if you're a patron, ta-da, then you can also get access to my Google Docs. That's what the Patreon is going to be for the next few months as I gear up towards this Kickstarter. If you don't want to be a patron, that's fine. It's only $2 a month, and you'll get access to that living document, as well as a bunch of other cool goodies that are on there, by the way. There's all kinds of fun stuff on the Patreon. You'll get to go into our Discord, the Fistiverse, with your own special hat that only patrons get, and access to the Discord, the very select Discord sub-channel thing that, again, only patrons and backers of the games can get. If you just want to be a backer, in the next couple of months, this is going to be written and there's going to be art commissioned, all kinds of fun stuff, and we're going to do a Kickstarter. And this book is going to have robots and demons and an actual title. I promise I'll think one up. I'll do that today. That'll be my project. Next update. Bam, name of the project. So if you just want to back it, that's a fine way to share your support. I really want, since we have a GM screen as well now, I really want that Kickstarter to be our next breakout thing that we do. It's going to be a cool book. You'll be able to get a copy of the core book if you want to bundle into it. You can get a copy of the GM screen. I really want to make the GM screen a thing that exists, not just as a printout as it currently does, but as a straight up, like, cool, sexy laminated piece of cardboard that you guys can have. By the way, GM screen's on sale. You can get the print. You can get a gorgeous PDF that is very, very usable and has some high quality art inside. So go check it out. Lots of ways to contribute. And as always, the most important thing is your enthusiasm. I love your money. Don't get me wrong. Your money's great. But I want people to play my fucking game. So if you run games, if you play games, if you just think it's really cool, come onto our Discord, the Fistiverse. Go talk about it in tabletop role-playing game forums. Tell everybody. Your enthusiasm, your support, that's the most important thing. Go and play, goddammit. Put your fists in the post-apocalypse. In any event, that's enough shilling from me. It's been really real talking to you guys about this new game. I'm excited about it. Fucking Ashura and robots or whatever. Coming soon. Kickstarter near you. See you later.